They came from across the country in their thousands, setting off through the streets led by veterans of the iconic March on Washington from 50 years ago. While the slogans on individual placards and t-shirts varied, the crowds were united in their desire to pay tribute to those who took to these same streets in 1963, an occasion which assured a place in history for a now iconic global figure.
I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Now, 50 years on, the circumstances are very different. A sea of bright colours winds its way along against the backdrop of the nation's capital, the police and other agencies supporting the march, rather than trying to prevent it. The atmosphere among the marchers was largely jubilant. There was a definite mood of celebration, but many also sounded a clear note of caution, expressing frustration that even after the election of the first African-American president, many issues remained unresolved.
We rode our motorcycles up here today to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King's March on Washington, D.C. Long journey to go. Just having an African-American president doesn't mean anything, because the way as he's being treated as an African-American with the Congress of the United States not allowing him to, one, select his own judges. Still got several of them hasn't went through Congress as of yet. I would say due to racism, but you know, this country is racist. It's the bottom line. Racism is not dead in the United States. It's still alive.
Like, it's interesting this march is happening now because we're still kind of talking about the same issues that they were back then, like jobs. The Voting Rights Act just got, you know, kind of struck down. So I don't know. I think it's just important to be here, like, a solidarity for that.
You have to hear something different because we've evolved. In '63, we weren't marching for the rights of people who are members of the LGBT community. Individuals with disabilities and families with children were recognized under our civil rights laws. So the message has to be the same, but it has to evolve just like we have, and the fight needs to continue, and we identify all the different areas where there is inequality, and we keep fighting, and we keep on going, and I do believe that we'll continue to have to do so.
I feel better, so much better, since I laid down, burning down. Yeah, I feel better, yeah, so much better, since I laid down, burning down. Here we go.
As the morning drew to a close, those marching were joined by thousands more. Together they headed to the Lincoln Memorial, where a program of speakers from the worlds of faith, entertainment and politics were addressing the crowd.
And as we, the people, continue to honor the dream of a man and a movement.
They melted hearts, and they moved millions, including a 17-year-old boy watching alone in his home in Arkansas.
Eventually it was time for the main event. The arrival of President Obama met by cheers from a crowd fully aware of the significance of the speech that he was about to deliver.
Because they marched, a voting rights law was signed. Because they marched, doors of opportunity and education swung open so their daughters and sons could finally imagine a life for themselves beyond washing somebody else's laundry or shining somebody else's shoes. Because they marched, city councils changed, and state legislatures changed, and Congress changed, and yes, eventually the White House changed. When millions of Americans of every race and every region, every faith and every station can join together in a spirit of brotherhood, then those mountains will be made low, and those rough places will be made plain, and those crooked places, they straighten out towards grace. And we will vindicate the faith of those who sacrifice so much and live up to the true meaning of our creed as one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Even for a man with President Obama's oratory prowess, matching the power of Martin Luther King's words from 50 years ago was always going to be a near impossible challenge. The crowds filed out of the park in buoyant spirits, The President seemed to have struck the right chord, paying a suitable tribute, but also acknowledging that when it comes to civil rights in America, there was still much more to be done.